Change the Philippines. Why the heck would anybody want to change the Philippines? First place, is so much more economically viable right now than in America. There's not a lot of political division going on, like experiencing now in the States. It's got beautiful beaches, it has beautiful women, friendly people. But there is one common thread that seems to run through us guys and us foreigners when we get over here, that we say, hey, I think we need to fix that. I want to warn you right now, if you take that mindset, it's a very slippery slope that you're going down. And that's what I'm going to discuss in this video. Changing the Philippines. What the hell is the common denominator out here that seems to flow through so many expats, AKA foreigners like myself, that decide to relocate from our home countries, mine being America, and move out to the Philippines? I just mentioned all the positives, the beaches, the people, the women, lower cost of living, all the whole enchilada. What the hell is the problem? Well, it does permeate through damn near anybody and everybody that moves out here. And it's really hard to put it in one little package and just hand it to you. It's a lot of little components that are bouncing around that kind of make a mixed bag, which causes this dissension. And I'd like to be able to sum it up, but it's really more of a piecemeal type of explanation. So I would say one of the things is that irritates guys can sometimes just be the attitude of the folks that they're dealing with. When I say the folks, I mean the local folks. Now, I just said how cool and gentle and kind and smiley they are, and they are. But there tends to be, according to us, a kind of lackadaisical attitude, a mañana attitude. Believe me, my wife's favorite word is later. I ask her, hey, when are we going to take care of this issue that we're having with whatever? And she'll say, oh, we'll do that later. It's okay. Right now, we're going to go over here. And it kind of it permeates throughout the whole society. You've heard of Filipina time. Now, if I'm going to meet Bud Brown, my buddy, who actually inspired this video, he doesn't know it. And I say, Bud, I'm going to meet you at 9 a.m. over at the Henry, which is exactly what I did yesterday. Well, guess what? We were both there at 9 a.m. And if I say, hey, to a Filipino, I'm going to meet you at 9 o'clock at the Henry. Well, that's kind of a suggestion, with the exception of a few guys that I know that are on top of their game out here. And it's just that. People bitch and moan all day long about the traffic, and more than the traffic, because traffic you can't really change, but it's the driving habits of the people. Well, all of us that, as far as I know when my generation, I went through driving school in high school. And I grew up, I always used to joke, because we'd get stuck in traffic in LA, that I went through puberty in the back seat of my dad's car. That's how long we'd be stuck on the 101 or the 405. And so the point being is that I grew up in a car. And I rode motorcycles when I was a little kid. So I was fairly adept at both when I got over here. The people here are very adept at driving motorcycles because they're like me, they're almost raised on them. Cars are a new introduction that's come along, I'd say in the last 5 years, when easy financing was introduced. And there's a lot more cars on the road right now. And guess what? Those folks never went to driving school. I was with a woman doing a separate video back, I don't know, half a year ago, 6 months ago. And she was trying to buy a car at the dealership, this Toyota dealership we were filming a video at, totally unrelated. And I said, how long have you been driving? And she said, well, I've never driven. I said, do you have a driver's license? He said, no, but she's just going to buy that car and then she's just going to take a leap of faith and go out on the road with it. That's how it happens out here. And that's where we see people do what we would figure to be just knucklehead stuff on the road, not looking before they turn. They'll be on your right and they'll cut in front of you and make a left. I hit a guy one time doing that on my bike with me on the back. He was on my right and he just cut in front of me because he wanted to go down that street and I couldn't stop in time. I hit his back tire and we didn't go down, but it was one of those aha moments. Anyway, so there's one. Another one that I'll get into is service industry. I guess a restaurant would be the best example for this video, for this topic. There have been countless times that I've gone into a foreigner-friendly restaurant, we'll call it, not a local place. At the local places, everything goes smooth because they're all talking the same language. They all know what the deal is. Nobody's in a rush. Everybody's just having their food, and the transaction there is just automatic. Different story when the poor Filipino or Filipina's got to deal with someone like me as we sit down at this table and they've got a foreigner boss or owner. I'm going to digress for a minute. When I was working and I got promoted after a couple of years to a management level, the boss of the entire store that I worked at would come by and he would check in on me and see how I was doing and what was going on. And he was a very unusual guy. He's the type of guy that was a genius at what he did and how he dealt with people. And you can't forget this man once you met him and you've had any kind of interaction with him. And one day he goes, so what's going on there, Mr. McGill? How you doing? And I started to bitch about, I was in charge of, I think, 6 guys, maybe 8. It changed at one time. They were my responsibility in this department that I worked in. And I started launching off on this one guy. And I said, oh, this, blah, 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 blah. He's not doing this, can't do that, this, that, the other. And then I knew I was in trouble when he sat there and listened to me. And he let me unload. He just sort of had this little twinkle in his eye, a little smile on his face. And I knew I was in trouble when he put his arm around me. I've worked with him for a number of years, and that was never a good sign. And so he said, well, Paulie, he says, you know what my take on all this is? I said, what's that, sir? He says, there's no such thing as a bad employee. There's only poorly managed employees. Now, let me pose this question to you, sir. Who's their manager? Who's this guy's manager? And I had to say, well, that's me. And he goes, well, there you go. And off he went off to his office. I never forgot that. I can sort of apply that to what happens out here in these foreigner so-called friendly restaurants that we tend to frequent, where the food that we like is more available than, as I said, the local areas. One thing that will happen frequently is walk in with a group of 4 people. And first of all, sometimes, depends on the restaurant, of course, you have to get the server's attention that you're even there because they're busy looking at their phone. And so they'll come over and with nothing in their hands, and they'll say yes. And I say, well, can we get a menu? Oh, sure. Very friendly, very happy. Go back and bring back 1 menu for 4 people. And then you have a decision to make. And that is, do I ask this person for 3 more menus, or do we just play past the potato and look at it? Most of the time, we just use the one. I'll look at it, say, okay, I want this, that, the other, and then we'll place our order. The second component of the restaurant ordeals is the food never seems to come out together. 4 people, I might get mine first. And a guy told me the other day, he said, I went with my girlfriend to such and such a restaurant. She got her food. I waited 30 more minutes to get mine. And then he made the critical error of saying he refused to pay for it. He got up and he bitched and moaned about how he didn't get his food. Is he technically right? Yes. Is he wrong in his approach? Absolutely. We're foreigners in a foreign country. We're visitors here. Remember, it's not the employee's fault who he's chewing out. It's not the cook's fault who cooked the food. It's the manager's fault. The manager of that employee, be it the owner or a dedicated manager, did not train either the server or the cook properly, or isn't supervising his own business to make sure that that food gets out there promptly and correctly. Happens a lot. Where I feel the mistake is when you take that angst, that anger, or that dissatisfaction out on the person, and God forbid, you create a scene and cause that person to lose face. We all, the guys that have been out here for any number of years or months, whatever, really, really regret it when someone acts in that manner, because they don't remember him. They just remember the color of his skin and what he looks like, and that he's an old guy, and you get the drift. Now we're put into this category the minute we walk into a place. There's a little bit of, the people are a little less friendly perhaps, or they're actually a little more tentative about even wanting to deal with this. There's already a communication problem. And if you talk, or if I talk really fast and say, okay, I want a cheeseburger, but I want it over medium and I don't want any tomatoes, you've lost them. So I've schooled people if they've asked me. You just tell the server, give me a cheeseburger, and shut your mouth. And then when they're done writing it, because they write it out in longhand, then say, can I have it with no tomato, or can I have extra whatever? I've always told people that if you're buying a hamburger and it comes out with tomato and lettuce, don't even ask for them to remove it. Just take it off yourself and then eat the friggin' cheeseburger and let the vegetables sit on the side of your plate. Special orders are very, very complicated out here unless you're going to a real highbrow type of establishment. An example of one guy that contacted me, I'll never forget this, 5 years ago. I think when I first started this channel, or I was active on Facebook, one of the two, but he found me, he hunted me down, and he said, I'd like to buy you lunch. His name was Greg. I met Greg and his girlfriend for lunch and encountered an hour and a half of total freaking brain damage listening to this yahoo talk about himself and how rich he was and this and that and the other. And he was just the greatest guy ever. And he invited me out to lunch and then just paid for him and his girlfriend. And I had to pay for my own meal, which is no big deal. But I found that to be kind of indicative of this guy's attitude. And because if I invite you out to lunch, I'm going to pick up the check. That's how it's done where I come from. And he came from America. And I said, man, I never want to see this dude again. I don't like his attitude. I don't like the way that he is. I could tell that his girlfriend was embarrassed, and he was just a braggart and a boisterous and the greatest thing since sliced bread. And what his parting shot to me was when he left the table, as we were parting ways for the last few minutes of our encounter, he says, you know what I'm going to do while I'm here, Paul? I said, no, Greg, what are you going to do? So I'm going to change the Philippines. And I thought, oh boy, this is not going to end well. A couple days later, two of my friends called me and they said, hey, did you meet this Greg guy? He's going around contacting everybody. I said, yeah. I said, unfortunately, I did. And they go, well, I'm glad you said it, Paul, because I feel the same way. If I never see this dude again, it'll be too soon. So we kind of forgot about old Greg. All of us were avoiding him if possible. He really wasn't prevalent in our little world anyway. He was racing around. Came back to me 2 months later. One of the guys that I talked to, he said, "Did you hear about Greg?" I said, "No." He said, "Well, Greg rented a scooter from some woman and he had damaged it in some way, shape, or form. He either dropped it or he, I don't know. I don't know what the problem was. Scratched it, something came wrong. And the woman wanted to be paid and he refused to pay. Mr. Rich, Mr. Wonderful. And then he gave her a verbal shellacking like none other. Big mistake. Now, I wasn't there to witness it, but my friend, who I know very well, was. And he said he made such a scene that this woman not only lost face, but she really got angry. And they got into a shouting match. And you don't often hear about that. That's maybe one of three instances that I've heard of in all the time here where foreigner and Filipino are going back and forth. Turns out the woman he decided he was going to teach a lesson to, for whatever reason, was super connected out here to a great big politician. And she had this little scooter rental just for something to do, more or less a hobby. She wasn't relying on it. Well, Greg, long story short, of course, he's been blacklisted from the Philippines. So much for Greg changing the Philippines. Seems like the Philippines came up and bit him right in the ass, as it should have. I was never more proud to know that this guy was never, ever going to be brought here and that he met the justice that he totally deserved. So, attitude of the Filipinos. Guess what? That is the attitude of the Filipinos. And I choose to simply embrace it. I choose, and most of my friends and buddies, we already know what the drill is going to be. So we're no longer shocked. We're no longer annoyed. If we come in and we say, okay, I'd like to have this, we're going to stick with the restaurant. I'd like to have this plate right here. I'm sorry, sir, but we're out of stock on that. That just rolls off on us and goes, okay. So, have a plan B. Have you got this? Have you got that? Yes. Okay, well, give me that. Okay, you're not going to get a cheeseburger today. You're going to get a chicken sandwich. And one other thing I want to relate about my old boss to the Philippines, and I think this encapsulates everything that I'm trying to say here. I came up to my old boss. Remember the one that put his arm around me? And this was another bright move that I made. I had this epiphany, I thought, of how we can improve our store, our workplace, his store. Let me back up. Not our store, his store. And I came up to him and I said, sir, can I get 5 minutes of your time? He said, sure. And so I told him how he could improve upon his store. And you're going to love this. Here was his reaction. He said, come with me. And we walked outside. Again, he got my arm around me. I know I'm going to take some heat, because he put his arm around me. He said, walk with me, Paul. And we went out the front door and we went into the middle of the street where there was a median. And he turned around and he says, what's the name of that you see up there? And I repeated back to him the name of the store. And he says, I got news for you. He says, when that sign up there says Paul McGill Ford, you make sure to go ahead and make those changes you just suggested to me. I said, I understand. So, whenever I guess I want to make a change here in the Philippines, when I open up a map, and instead of it saying the Philippines, it says McGillville, that's when I'll be empowered enough to make all the changes that I feel are necessary here in the Philippines so it can be just that perfect, idyllic place for all of us. All right, kids, I'll see you in the next video.